is one sign the Soviets can make that would be unmistakable, that would advance dramatically the cause of freedom and peace. General Secretary Gorbachev, if you seek peace, if you seek prosperity for the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Ah, yes, a conservative hero, and that's the name of a book. Garland Tucker III, Chairman and CEO of Triangle Capital Corp., historian and author, has written Conservative Heroes, 14 Leaders Who Shaped America from Jefferson to Reagan. Good to see you, sir.
Hey, good to be here.
All right, so obviously from Jefferson to Reagan, we know who the bookends are, more or less. How did you come up with the select 14?
Well, I guess that's one of the exciting things about writing a book like this. You get to pick your favorite 14. Some of them are well known, and then there's some others that are not so well known.
Well, let's talk about some of the lesser known ones, so we could educate the folks and tease them. We'll also name the ones who were in it, a complete list before we go. But who's lesser known?
Well, two of the lesser known ones are Nathaniel Macon and John Randolph, two Jeffersonians back in the early part of the 19th century. They stayed very consistent to the original Jefferson principles and had a lot to do with forming early views of conservatism. Some others, Grover Cleveland is not too well known. He's the last conservative Democrat. Calvin Coolidge and Andrew Mellon are better known, but have fallen a bit out of favor. And then there are two Democrats from the 1930s and 40s that almost nobody remembers. It's John Davis and Josiah Bailey.
And how did they qualify for your list?
Well, Davis was the 1924 Democratic nominee for president, the last conservative that the Democrats nominated. And he went on to be the main challenger in the courts of New Deal legislation, won some major victories before the Supreme Court, was a very fine lawyer and a wonderful man. Josiah Bailey was a senator from North Carolina, a Democrat, and led the fight against the court packing scheme, one of Roosevelt's few real defeats in Congress. And he also advanced something called the Conservative Manifesto, which was one of the first attempts to get a bipartisan coalition, conservative coalition in Congress.
When you look at today's landscape, first of all, is there a need right now for another conservative hero? You know, we tend to judge our and have since Reagan on the Republican side our presidential candidates against Reagan as a measuring stick, and no one measures up. So where are we in the conservative movement right now, and who might be the heroes, or do we need to find one?
Well, my final chapter of the book includes three. It's Buckley, Goldwater, and Reagan, and even though it's the final chapter of the book now, I in no way mean to infer that it's the final chapter for conservatism.
Right.
I certainly think there certainly need to be some more conservative heroes, and I look forward to somebody adding to the book a few years from now and putting the 15th, maybe 16th in there.
Where is conservatism right now, do you believe?
Well, it's interesting, Steve. If you look back in the 1950s, very few politicians, Republicans or otherwise, were willing to be called conservatives. And today, virtually all, however many there are on the Republican side, 15, 16 or whatever, are at least saying they're conservatives.
Right.
And so it's, I think conservatism's alive and well.
And of course, liberalism has changed its name to progressive among in some circles anyway.
Well,
so that speaks well of conservatism. So, so of the group, let's say that's running for president, or that you will get in, like the Walkers who haven't gotten in yet, is there anybody who stands out in your mind as far as if not a hero, a champion of the cause?
Well, I would say that any of the front runners, if you mentioned Walker, Rubio, Bush, yeah. I think any of those, if they were elected, have the opportunity to be a hero. If you think back, I'm old enough to remember when Reagan was elected in 1980, and very few people had the expectation that he would be a great president, and he, of course, really was. So
you never know.
You never know
where somebody will emerge.
Calvin Coolidge was an accidental president and turned out to be a great conservative president.
Of all the figures in the book, who's your favorite?
Well, that's hard to say. I would argue that Calvin Coolidge was probably the most successful conservative president, in that he not only reduced taxes, which Reagan did, but he also reduced the actual size of the federal government, which of course Reagan wanted to do, but was not able to do.
And of course, since then, it's ballooned even more and more and more and more. All right, well, hopefully, one of these guys or gals running will emerge and will impress us, and will be in part 2 or volume 2 of your book.
Good. I'd love to see an appendix to it.
Yes, great to see you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, folks, we're coming back with much more of the Steve Malzberg Show. If you stay right there, don't go away.